As you can probably tell, I think the future of enterprise is green, and I wanted to talk about that by explaining a little bit about my story and the story of the green thing himself. I thought I'd start by introducing myself. My name is Andy, and a bit of background. I used to be in a spectacularly unsuccessful band for a few years, and you can tell quite how long ago by the depth of recession in my hairline. I went to New York and met my wife, and that's how I sort of started this digital agency. And I think out of that, apart from family, the two things that sort of are strongest in my world and that I'm most interested in is I'm very fascinated by the internet and what makes the heart of interactive experiences tick. That's not me. That's a picture I got from the internet this morning. And just what digital networks is doing to society and the economy. But I'm also passionate about the environment, and bringing these two things together is really what caused me and a friend of mine to co-found this environmental non-profit called Green Thing, which I'll sort of talk about a bit later. I think there's a couple of sort of strands to my story that I think also are very quite powerful themes for the future of enterprise, and that's this idea of connectivity and meaning. And so for me, it's the connectivity is the internet, and the meaning is the cause that I particularly is close to my heart. But I think in general, the two sort of trends that are shaping things are, the sort of ubiquity of kind of digital information and the way that that's kind of washing through the world and the connections that's making, and a sort of, I thought the last talk, it sort of rather beautifully set up what I want to touch on. This sort of sense of a need for greater meaning in life that I think it's really on the rise, that people are sort of looking for something greater than themselves to contribute to and believe in. Global warming, very, very important. That's why that was a cause close to my heart. The science is incontrovertible, as you can see by the progression of underwear shrinkage since the 18th century. So it was really important to do something about this. And when we started, I come from a sort of communications background, if you like, creative communications online, and Narish, my partner in Green Thing, came from the more traditional sort of advertising marketing world. And when we were trying to figure out what we could do to make a difference, we thought, well, we're not scientists or technologists or finance guys, but what we do understand is creativity. So perhaps creative communications is the right skill set to bring to bear. But we were reminded of a quote by, I don't know if, does anyone here remember Bill Hicks? Sort of great man that he was, a comedian, and he had a line in one of his routines which was, if anyone here is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself, you're Satan's spawn, filling the world with bile and garbage, kill yourself. And he was actually very serious when he said it, and so perhaps that's a little harsh, but I think probably a lot of people might agree, but I think the point was no one's expecting people from marketing or advertising or communications to actually make the world any better. Generally, it's sort of a part of the problem. But we thought, actually, there was a way that perhaps if one could use some of the rigor and the thought process that goes into sort of understanding consumer psychology, perhaps that could be brought to bear on this problem. And so we sort of approached it a little bit like a brief, if you like, and tried to understand the problem and the audience. And it seemed to us a lot of research shows the same kind of thing, which is that the vast majority of people in most societies, probably more in the Western developed world, the North, want to lead a greener life, but can't actually get around to it. They can't make it a habit or a routine. They do it a bit, or they're inclined towards it, but it's just not something that's habitual. And on either side of that, you have the people who are either very committed, or the people who frankly don't give a damn, and unless they think it'll get them laid or there's some sort of social reward, they're not going to. So our core insight was we were trying to figure out why was it that people will queue round the block for the latest iPhone, but they can't be bothered to switch off the light when they leave the room. Because these aren't very difficult things to do. And our conclusion was that some things live in a sort of psychological space of stuff that you want to do. They're about pleasure and leisure and fulfillment and self-expression. And other things are really about chores and admin and sort of on to-do lists. And people feel a sense of obligation that they should do them. They don't actually want to do them. So we thought if you could move taking action about climate change into a space of desire, if you like, then that would be a good thing to do. So we sort of created Green Thing as a brand and a service that did that. And in a sense, what we're trying to do is reframe sustainable living as something that's fun and fashionable and worthwhile in its own right. And really the number one thing that we're trying to do is inspire. And again, I think the sort of connections with the last talk about, I think people do need to be inspired about the possibilities and in a sense, a vision of a possible future that they actually want to be involved in. The idea behind this, if you like, there's a sort of philosophy, I guess, underpinning this, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about that because it speaks to some of the issues about future enterprise shapes and size, is this idea of creativity, and we call it creativity versus climate change. And the problem we see, and certainly from our perspective and coming from the backgrounds we do, there's an enormous amount of unbelievable creativity and ingenuity in the world. You know, every moment there's, entrepreneurs are probably a definition of that. Enormous kind of innovation, creative powers, and just the ability to kind of invent things and make things. The problem is, most of the resources that go into this sort of engine of creativity, this force, because of the Industrial Revolution and the way our sort of economy has grown up, are pushing people towards an unsustainable life. Not because people are deliberately trying to do that, that's just the way the situation is. So you have this enormous force in the world which is incredibly powerful, which is actually making the problem worse. Every single day it's pushing us sort of closer to sort of a higher carbon society, if you like. And against that, if you look at the counterforce from the sort of well-meaning NGOs and who are all doing fantastic work, and I mean Unlimited, but we have some funding from Unlimited in the UK. But generally speaking, it felt to us from our background as if it wasn't really a fair fight. It was a little bit like a crap magic trick, against this kind of, the enormous amounts of kind of force that goes into telling the other side of the story. There wasn't really an equal and opposite force inspiring people to lead a greener life. And from a consumer point of view, we thought it's a little bit like the choice between, do you want to hang out the Apple store in Fifth Avenue, this sort of cutting-edge temple of consumerism, or do you want to have a candle in a cave? And I think a lot of people actually feel that that's the choice, that actually living sustainably is about giving up everything that's interesting or worthwhile in life, and you're just going to have to do without it, and it's hair, shirt, and sandals. And no one's going to choose that, right? I mean, very few people will, and they'll be the people who are in the committed group that I talked about earlier. Taking one example of this, if you take the auto industry and the idea of driving versus walking, one of our things that we ask people to do is walk where you can and take alternative forms of transport. Enormous amounts of thought goes into design of cars, right, to make them objects of desire, to make them fashion statements. It's who you're seen with while you're driving that's important. Music, the spell of music is incredibly powerful, right? There's even a whole music genre, drive time, on the radio, which is based around the thrill of the accelerator pedal and the certain type of music that goes with that. There's the spell of speed, where busy people, successful people are very busy, and they need to kind of get from A to B in sort of 0.3 seconds when they're accelerating from 0 to 60. Otherwise, they're losers. And then there's the sort of mythology of adventure. That cars are a symbol of our personal identity and sense of freedom. So these are really powerful forces, if you like, sort of psychological complex of associations. And what we're interested in trying to do is tell the other side of that story a bit, with limited resources, it has to be said. One of the things we like, and I wish we did do this, but this is somebody else's, MBT Shoe is just an example of somebody that's come out with a bit of engineering ingenuity and created a better walking shoe. So it's actually it's easier to walk, it's more ergonomic, it's healthier, and it makes walking a more pleasurable experience. And of course, it's designed, so it makes a statement about who you are on a fashion level too. With music, we thought there's drive time music, there's an incredible soundtrack to driving, so why shouldn't there be a walking soundtrack? So we got together with a bunch of musicians, and we asked them all to write pieces of music at 105 beats per minute, which is the walking speed we came up with, kind of walking around the kitchen table about 3 in the morning. And people like Howie B and lots of people on the Big Chill label, and Tug from Basement Jacks and people like that. And so we called it a Walkcast, and it's the world's first Walkcast, and you can download it, and it's an hour's worth of walking music that's been deliberately written as a soundtrack for you to kind of walk around the world. And then we thought, what about adventure? The best thing to do here was to make a short film which explains why walking is actually probably the most adventurous thing you could possibly do.
You know, said the man, rather than drive today, I'm gonna walk. And so he walked. And as he walked, he saw things, strange and wonderful things he would not otherwise have seen. A deer with an itchy leg, a flying motorcycle, father and daughter separated from a bicycle by a mysterious wall. And then he stopped. Walking in front of him was her, the woman who as a child had skipped with him through fields and broken his heart. Sure, she'd aged a little. In fact, she'd aged a lot, but he felt all his old passion for her return. Ford, he called softly, for that was her name. Don't say another word, Gusty, she said, for that was his name. I know a tent next to a caravan exactly 300 yards from here. Let's go there and make love. In the tent, Ford undressed. She spread one leg and then the other. Gusty entered her boldly and made love to her rhythmically while she filmed him because she was a keen amateur pornographer. The earth moved for both of them, and they lived together happily ever after. And all because he decided to walk that day.
I think, thank you. Some of the themes in the last talk are actually, I think, are really interesting as well, because at TED in Oxford and over the last few TEDs that I've been to, there's been a sense of this as a growing force, as in people's preoccupation with some of the huge issues in our society that are facing us, kind of socially and economically. And there are obviously questions about the environment. There's our economy, our sort of education systems, health services, the social inequality, the lack of community in society, our population's getting older, there isn't enough water, and there's not enough oil. And these are serious issues, and I think they're, if you like, changing people's focus and preoccupation and awareness. And as a result, just as people are actually, I think, searching for things that matter in life a little bit more, because these are substantial things that need to be addressed, and it somehow seems a bit striking a bit of a dissonant chord with business as usual, with the if you like, the consumer dream that was really born in the 20th century post-war. And I think that right as this is happening online and connectivity, there's a whole new world of channels for giving and sharing and creating meaning. And this is at a time when I think this is a Nobel Prize winning economist, Robert Fogel, and I think this is a really sort of interesting phrase that, there's a large portion of society now. Obviously this doesn't affect the developing world, and there's certainly a lot of people to whom this doesn't apply, but a large portion of society, hundreds of millions of people now, don't have to worry about where the next meal is coming from. They have the means, but they don't have the meaning. And I think that's why there's lots of things that are rising to fill that void. Now, this isn't a sort of saying that consumerism is going to go away in terms of the enterprise of the future. And in fact, in times of recession, we're told that we should shop more because that makes everything all right. What I am suggesting is that this kind of middle class that's the engine, if you like, of the consumer economy in the 20th century, I think is shifting its focus, and it's partly because of education. There were about 50,000 full-time students in the sort of 1930s in the UK, and there's now 2.5 million, and that's kind of the same all over the world. So as people get more education, they're not as susceptible to the same ideas and sort of cultural values that get beamed at them through traditional sources of information and authority. I think that, you know, to paraphrase David Putnam, I think consumers are to some extent relocating their dreams. You know, they're not finding what they're looking for in life in shops anymore. And so there's a real sense and a yearning for something other than that. And I think the challenge for enterprises to figure that out. And for me, climate change is brilliantly symbolic of this, because we need to change behavior and values because we've got a very real problem to address. But also, the only way we can actually fix a problem that affects all of us is together. So in a sense, we can't do that without the connectivity that the internet represents, because in a way, the internet is a sense of a global consciousness and connectedness, the like of which we've never had historically. So in a sense, these two things are happening at the same moment in time, which is, I think, quite interesting. Just to leave you on a slightly more practical note, to sort of take it down a philosophical gear. In terms of practical next steps, I think we need to build sustainable products, and not just products that take carbon out of the supply chain, but things that actually help people live more sustainably in the real world, and things that they want. And at Green Thing, we launched our first, our small step towards this, our first sustainable product a couple of weeks ago. And we noticed a terrible problem in society, which is lost, abandoned single gloves. And if you look around, you'll see these everywhere. And it's a terrible situation, because when people find a single glove, they tend to put it somewhere where other people can see it, because everyone knows in their heart that it's a tragic occurrence, that gloves are made to be in a pair. And we thought, well, that's quite interesting. What would happen if you took these single gloves, and perhaps you got museums and transport organizations and individuals to send in their single gloves, and you washed them and you paired them up together, not obviously won't match exactly, but you created new sort of aesthetic pairs. You sewed in labels left and right, so if somebody says, your gloves don't match, you could say, but they do, because they're actually part of a pair. And we repaired them and we packaged them up, and we call them Glove Love. And we sell them for $5 a pair, which is obviously it's a not-for-profit, and all the profits go to charity, but it's not really a profit-making thing. It's about getting as many people in as possible to do it. And I think it's you know, obviously sort of quite a delightful thing, but it's also, I think, quite symbolically important, because this is a good combination of design where it's the form, because they look rather nice, function, they keep your hands warm, just like gloves, and systemic sustainability, because every pair would have ended up in the landfill, and you would have bought a new pair, which would have used up resources. If you do send in a single glove, which I obviously entreat you to do, should you find one, they get a unique code. So if you want, what happens is that we'll then let you know when your glove has found love. And we ask people who buy the gloves to send in a picture of themselves wearing it. So we'll also send a link to the person that donated the single glove, so they can see their new glove in a new home. So I think that's really, for me, part of what we're trying to do is really, in closing, it's about painting a vision of a society and a way of living that people want. And, you know, people think of sustainable living as a life without, and we want to paint it as a life with, that you actually get more happiness and society and community and health, and it's sort of kinder and friendlier and smarter and more ingenious, creative, and actually a better way to be. And I think, for me, the enterprises of the future that survive, let alone thrive, will be ones that are in tune with and understand that. Thank you.